The American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here every Friday from 7 to 9 Central for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. If you would like to speak to the host, the call-in number is 218-339-8525. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Absolutely. Good evening to everybody. It's Friday, May 4th. I'm so happy to be here. It's the Truth Tonight Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Roxy Lopez. And before I go any further, I must let you know, and I really need your help. Our guest, one of our guests today, Miriam Delicato, who is, her message is aimed at all humanity. And Miriam has established a really special bond with the traditional Hopi. And, of course, you know that this show is broadcasted to you live from Phoenix, Arizona. Miriam has been working with the Hopi here. And I had an unfortunate phone call a couple of hours ago. Miriam will not be able to make the show, and neither will Bernard Alvarez. And we have been asked to pray for them, pray for love in the world, pray from our heart chakras. This is heavy stuff, people. It's been a heavy week. I can't even tell you. Of information, and a lot of groups and different organizations. We are really starting to bond and collectively work together on this planet. It is amazing. It can be stressful at times, but it's absolutely amazing. But Miriam has asked for the prayers. She is in need of prayer. They have a lot of opposition, and I think that anyone who's listening to this show right now knows what opposition is like. It's not a good feeling, especially when the opposers are liars and thieves. Very difficult to sit and listen. So we will reschedule Miriam and Bernard for another time when the climate is not so heavy as it is today. This week has been a very volatile week in Arizona, and it's getting worse. I have to say, I myself have been working in a coalition for nearly 5 years on some water rights issues here in Casa Grande, Arizona. And I got some bad news this week. They've lowered the water pressure legal limit. And, of course, during the 5 years of our letter writing and town hall meetings, etc., they really wasted our time knowing that they were going to be changing the laws in this state. And now the legal limit is 20 PSI. But I'm going to tell you something right now, and I do have some guests that are coming on the show. So we have guests for you, and we're going to get down and dirty today. Because what's happening here is, if you all remember the big stink in Arizona in April 2010 with SB 1070, the Immigration Act law, tyrannical law, whatever you want to call it. At the same time that law went through, that Governor Brewer passed it, the federal government started a lawsuit against the state of Arizona. The following months were pretty heavy in Arizona because California, being one of the biggest states, began to boycott us. And the industry, the hotel industry, football, baseball, all of it started going real south real fast because teams were boycotting Arizona in the NFL. And the hotels were usually packed with seminars, generally coming out of California, were getting cancellations up the wazoo. And a few months of this, Arizona was getting hammered because of the SB 1070. Then Governor Brewer made an announcement that she was going to cut water supply to California. And for those of you who do not know, Arizona supposedly supplies 25% of the water to California. So she cut the water off to California. And as you all know, this was a big dog and pony show, but it was like, okay, what is this all about? Meanwhile, in my local city, I was fighting with water pressure issues that seem to be going down every year, the water pressure itself. Let me tell you what happens in Arizona when the water pressure goes down really low. The water becomes so shallow in the mains, the pipes, that the water starts to get hot. So imagine this, in 115-degree weather, 4 months of the year, when you go to turn your water on to take a shower, that water is hot water on top of low pressure. And I will fight this. I will fight this, and I will continue to fight this. But let's go back to what Governor Brewer did. Cut off the water to California as you're going to do this to us? We're going to do this to you. You're going to boycott us? We're going to boycott you. It's not what it looks like. Water is the new blue gold, people. It's the next frontier. And what the federal government is working on doing with each of the states is what the states are doing is hoarding water now. We're going to talk about that in another show. And believe me, I have the facts. And America, you need to stand up. We have so much being taken away from us, it's not even funny. I also want to thank American Freedom Radio for a couple of things. Since I have joined the American Freedom Network family, our shows have been really amazing. And the producers are absolutely on it. And the owner, Danny Romero, is absolutely on top of this network. And I want to thank American Freedom Radio for offering me yet another show, because I have so many guests now that I'm booked for the rest of the year if I continue with once a week. So I want to thank them for finding a spot for me in the same time slot, which is 7 to 9 Central. I will now be having shows on Mondays and Fridays. So American Freedom Radio, you rock. No rules, no taboo topics, and a really tight, lean machine. So I have to thank you for that. And it's because of this show that now I'm getting contacted by so many people. You have no idea. This show is going to start to get really, really big. Our YouTube channel is just blowing up week after week. Our website, The Truth Denied, is blowing up. It means that people are waking up. That's all that's telling me. And the more we have opposition, it means the more worthy these types of shows are. It means people are listening and doing and taking action. So we do have Deborah Tavares from the Coalition in California coming on next Friday. She's going to talk about how to opt out of a smart meter. I did it. I can tell you how to do it too. It can be done. We're also going to have Howard Stein next week, and he's going to update us on everything following through to the end of this year. By the way, Howard Stein has been the most amazing man with the most amazing facts and the number one show on my network, on my radio show. The 14th, we start our Monday shows, 7 to 9 Central, and to start that off, to kick that off, is Rosalind Peterson, and she's got some really important news, some more updates on what's going on in our oceans of all things, as well as geoengineering, and some calls to action that we really need to get behind. The following week, we're going to have, that Friday, the 18th, we're going to have Al DeChico and Robert Forgets. They're coming on because we have a lawsuit that I'm a part of. They started it, and it's about geoengineering and the illness that goes with it. And people are turning in their blood tests. We did a call to action. We all are working together on this, and that call to action went through the roof in the last 3 weeks. People are sending in their hair samples, results in their test samples. So we really do need that. And so if you could go to Chemtrails Kill or Al DeChico's page, Geoengineering Lawsuit, and sign up and get those results. There's an attorney in place going pro bono after the federal government. Things are starting to take shape as long as we, the people, show up to the party. It's amazing. I can go on and on about the guests that are coming up. Just amazing stuff. And I'm really happy to have them all and the information and the work that they're all doing. But let's come back in a little bit. We have a wonderful guest who helped me out tonight. Our first guest tonight is Russ Tanner from the Global Skywatch, and we are going to get into it. We're going to really get into it. In the second hour, we're going to bring onto the show Dr. Will Spencer. He's going to talk about some stuff that he's been doing regarding the bees and curing. He doesn't like to use the word cure. Healing colony collapse disorders around the country. This is amazing. Healing cows, healing people. My pet, Harley, is now a member of the Dr. Will Spencer team. He's now under Dr. Spencer's care, and we have amazing results. But without any further ado, I don't want to waste any more time, and I must thank my dear friend Russ Tanner and Will Spencer for saying an hour before the show, "You got it, babe. We're there." Welcome, Russ Tanner. Thank you.
Hello, Roxy.
So, sorry I took up so much of the time in the front of the show, but we'll have a lot. Well, you have the rest of the hour, and of course you can stick around for the second hour too. So, Russ, what do you think about everything I was just talking about? Are you heads up on any of these subjects?
Yeah, some of it. I did talk to the attorney in California the week before last. I had a little email with him today. And I'm just trying to keep up with what's going on, with a lawsuit. He's working on getting things together, and we're looking to get people to send in their blood tests and water tests. So yeah, I've been keeping up with it and keeping track of what's going on as much as I can.
Well, yeah, and I've been a part of this, not this particular lawsuit. There's another lawsuit that he also has on the county level. And I think what Al DeChico and Robert are doing is fantastic. I mean, they're going into, Al's going into, the city council meetings, town hall meetings, wherever they'll listen, presenting these facts, because Al's, got a lot of toxins in his blood, and he's really suffering. And by the way, I don't know if you're noticing, Russ, but I'm just getting deluged with emails of ill people. And I don't know if you're up on this, but CBS, ABC, and NBC, our lovely mainstream media, has actually started reporting some truth. I can't even believe it. I almost fell off my chair. But this entire week, the number one topic for these channels is children and an epidemic of food allergies.
Mm-hmm.
They're finally coming out with it. Of course, those like yourself and Will Spencer have done this for quite some time. Those of us who have researched it know it's been going on for quite some time, but it's an epidemic now. And I don't know if you want to address that or not, Russ, but I personally don't think it's a food allergy. I think it's a genetically modified food allergy, but that's just my opinion. What do you think about this?
Well, I think you're 100% right. I also would add that it's no coincidence that children who get autism or get ADD and ADHD invariably have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. They have food allergies because the mercury causes mutations to the intestinal flora, which are the friendly bacteria in the intestinal tract. And those mutated bacteria then start eating holes in the lining, which then lets undigested proteins through into your bloodstream, and you start having these strange allergic reactions to foods you never had problems with before. So this in my mind, is a 100% artificially created epidemic. And I'm sure the mainstream media is going to put some kind of twist on it and blame someone. But I think that our inundation with chemtrails and the medical profession's fascination with mercury is catching up to us, has for quite a while. And that's why we're seeing this, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I agree with that. And Russ, do you deal at all with people that have food allergies at all?
I talk to a lot of people that have all kinds of problems, including food allergies. And I just let everybody know I'm not a doctor, and I don't prescribe or diagnose. I don't do any of the things doctors do. I just express my personal opinion based on my research and experience. But I've spoken with a lot of people who have food allergies or have children with food allergies.
Right, and then you deal. I know your name of the game because of your own experience, Russ, and with the mercury poisoning. I know that you do deal with heavy metals in the blood. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's an epidemic, a silent epidemic today that has been artificially thrust on people, and it is. I'm going to say something really astonishing right here, real quick. Is that I personally believe that mercury is the single largest cause of disease. I'm not saying it's the only cause of disease by any means. There are a lot of things that cause disease. But if you were to take all of the things that cause disease in the world, I think mercury has the largest slice of the pie, and that's due to the fact that the medical and dental professions have thrust it upon people.
Now, that's scary. To me, because in my lifetime, I've heard about mercury all my life. Mercury. How does mercury, by the way, get into fish?
Well, I believe that it's fish is a very protein-rich meat. And what happens with fish is wherever you have protein, you have sulfur. And
hold that thought, Russ. We'll continue on that with fish. I really want to know the answer. You're listening to the Truth Denied Talk Radio. We're speaking with Russ Tanner from Global Skywatch. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
We have Russ Tanner from Global Skywatch, and we were just talking about, I'd asked how fish gets, mercury poisoning or, mercury in them. And Russ, you were just explaining about the protein factor of fish, so that was interesting. And what was the rest of that thought?
Fish, very high in protein, and wherever you have protein, you have the amino acid cysteine, and cysteine is a high sulfur amino acid. And mercury loves sulfur. Mercury loves joints and tendons in your body, which is where you get a lot of arthritis from when you have people who are mercury toxic, because the mercury steals that sulfur away and leads to the degeneration of that cartilage in that tissue, and then you get inflammation. And in fish, you've got the same high protein, lots of sulfur, and through the food chain, mercury in the oceans, through the food chain, you get that mercury that is passed up into the fish, and it loves to reside in that tissue. That's what mercury does, is it gets out of the blood pretty quickly, which is why blood tests are pretty useless for mercury, and gets right into that tissue. And
then, so you catch a fish, and then you eat a fish, and then does that mercury obviously get in a human being now because you're consuming the fish that has the mercury? And then how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. The mercury that is in fish is usually combined with a methyl group, so it becomes methyl mercury, which is more bioavailable than regular metal. If you just have the straight metal, it's able to cross into cells and travel through tissues much more efficiently. And so it can be pretty toxic. And, several years ago, we were doing some mercury tests around the town I used to live in because there was a power plant there. a coal-burning power plant that produced a lot of mercury. And the last day, we had rented for a week a mercury vapor meter, which is the same one the EPA uses. It's a Jerome mercury vapor meter. And the last day we had nothing to do with it, so we said, let's just go have fun with it. And you know what we did is we put it over, we went out and got a bunch of tuna fish and salmon and cat food that had fish in it, and we started measuring the mercury coming off the cans. After opening several cans of this food, the mercury vapor level in the kitchen went up to 38 micrograms per cubic meter of mercury. Now, 50 is an action level. I mean, if I have this right, if I remember correctly, the EPA can shut a factory down if you've got 50, or at least, if I hope I'm remembering this right, 50 is the maximum exposure limit in the workplace for an 8-hour day. Now, we had 38 micrograms in the kitchen from opening cans of tuna and fish. We had over between 100 and 250 micrograms of mercury coming off those cans. You should have heard the reaction. I got this all on videotape, and the two guys I was working with were just, holy cow. It blew us away. We had no idea we were going to see this.
Now, the cans you were testing, you said, did you say pet food as well?
Yes. In fact, we got fish-based pet food, and it was showing mercury levels somewhere between 50 and 150. And then we thought, what happens when the cat goes to the bathroom? Let's check the litter box. Mm-hmm. So we went to the litter box. The litter box was showing 18 to 25 micrograms of mercury hovering around the litter box continuously.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Now, what did you use to test that? What did you use to test for mercury? And what if somebody suspects that they have mercury in their blood, what is the test? Because you were saying that doing a blood test isn't efficient for mercury. So why don't we talk about that? Let's talk about how did you test those cans in cat litter box for mercury, and then what does a human being do to test themselves for mercury?
Yeah, we rented a Jerome, I think it's called a 431X, if I'm remembering correctly. It's this vapor meter, mercury vapor meter, that costs about $15,000 new. You can rent it for about $100 a day, or at least back when we did it, you could. This is the same mercury meter that the EPA uses in a lot of its testing. This is the same meter you will see in videos with Dr. Boyd Haley, who is a brilliant scientist who made made some important discoveries about mercury, and then was consequently defunded by the Institutes of Medicine because they didn't want this mercury research to continue. You'll see, if you see videos with him holding a kind of a big black box with a handle on the top and a wand coming out the front. It's a thin tube that takes in air and measures the air. That's the Jerome mercury vapor meter that we used. And the way we tested is we just opened up a can of tuna and put the vapor meter over the top of the can, a few inches away, and we just took several readings. And we were just blown away with what we saw.
That's. I'm not surprised, but in a way I am that it was that high, I guess. And what was the reason why the litter box, like you said, at all times had, I think you said 20 or something? Why would the litter box constantly read mercury? I mean, without anything in the litter box.
Well, this is really interesting because cats have this reputation for being lazy. I have a cat here, nice cat, had it for years, took it in as a stray. And, but she's always been real lazy and kind of lethargic. And, it finally occurred to me one day that this cat is eating all kinds of fish, because she really liked the fish, cat food. And we finally realized that we were giving her fish so often that her mercury levels must have been just crazy. So when we measured when the mercury goes through, some of it is going to be absorbed in the tissue. Some of it's going to be released through the cat fecal matter. And so we thought, let's measure the litter box. And we were having, if my memory serves me right, in somewhere between the teens and close to 30. I think it was pushing up to about 28, if I remember right, micrograms. That was just coming right off the litter box. So it's just passing through the cat. as as it gets digested. I think that's what's happening.
Interesting. And then how should we humans? How should and maybe even for pets? How would we test for mercury in our bodies?
Well, here's this is a huge subject because I hear this. Everybody who calls me almost says, I got tested for mercury, and my mercury was low, but I have all the symptoms. What's going on? Mercury, most doctors, bless their hearts, most doctors will give you a blood test for mercury, which is, and I'm not saying this myself, this is right out of the voice of the great doctors today who teach us about mercury. Blood tests for mercury are virtually useless. So if your doctor is giving you a blood test for mercury, you should do your research and look online to the doctors who are teaching us about mercury and show your doctor that these doctors who are very educated about mercury show that blood tests are useless. Dr. Hal Huggins recommends in his book, It's All in Your Head, which was my first introduction to this subject, recommends a urine porphyrin test. There are these things in the blood called porphyrins that when mercury is present, they spill over into the urine and they can be measured. And he believes that that's one of the most reliable and it's very uninvasive tests for mercury. The problem...
And that, just real quick, and would that be for everyone, for people and pets? If you suspected like a pet, would that be the same thing you do for a pet?
I would suspect so. I haven't specifically seen research on that, so I can't really say with 100% certainty.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure, but it really does make sense that that's how you would check your pet. So urine porphyrin tests, the problem with them is many doctors have been taught that it's quackery. And of course, a lot of the real important modalities today, a lot of doctors have been taught that chelation therapy is quackery, for cholesterol and other things. And so there's a lot of propagandizing that is going on with doctors. And fortunately, many doctors are overcoming that. So urine porphyrin tests can be hard to get because of the propagandizing against them. The other test, so there's the pros and cons of the urine porphyrin. The other popular test that some doctors do know about is called a mercury challenge. And what a mercury challenge is they'll give you a mercury chelator like DMSA or DMPS. And what these are basically are just high sulfur chemicals that pull mercury out of your tissue where it loves to reside and then pulls it out your kidneys and it ends up in your urine. So what you do is you'll take one of these sulfur-rich chemicals for a while and maybe a day, and then you'll do, or maybe even one application, depends on how the doctor wants to administer it. And then you'll take a urine collection, usually for 24 hours, and then they'll look at urine and the mercury. The good part of that test is it's effective. It does give you an indication of whether you got mercury in your tissues. The bad part of that is that it can be dangerous or harsh at the very least. Because it's pulling mercury out rapidly out of the tissue, it's pulling out into the lymphatic system and into the blood, you can have horrible symptoms. And in fact, we did this. I had 3 rounds of DMPS IV chelation after my amalgam fillings were removed. And after the drip IV that we had, both Laura and I, my business partner, went through it together. We felt horrible. Then the doctor followed it up with an hour long, or it was about an hour and a half, of 50 grams of vitamin C, and we felt wonderful after that. Of course.
Wow. It's like you OD'd. It's like you OD'd on mercury.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's kind of like if you take vitamin C orally, you can only take so much before you reach what's called bowel tolerance, which is roughly about 10,000 milligrams, and you'll start to have diarrhea. Not true when you have it IV. You can have large amounts. And so we had 50 grams in an IV that followed immediately after our DMPS, and we felt wonderful after that. So that was the challenge. That was our experience with it. We had 3 of those. But the third time Laura got so incredibly sick, we started researching it and decided not to do it anymore. So the problem with that kind of testing, with a mercury challenge test, is it can be pretty harsh. I have spoken to a number of people on the phone over the last few years who have actually been damaged by it, who now have fibromyalgia,
What
several other.
What makes you sick, Russ? I mean, does it end up in the liver or something, or do you get more toxic for a short period because you're, purging all the mercury from the tissue? I mean, what makes you sick?
Well, what happens when you have an exposure of mercury? Let's say you are chewing some gum and the mercury is really vaporizing off your teeth, or you eat some fish, and so you have a big exposure of mercury. Mercury only stays in your blood typically for about 15 to 45 minutes, and then it's absorbed by various tissues in your body. When you have a chelator like DMSA or DMPS, or you even have a high dose of sulfur, or if you're eating salsa with cilantro in it, that mercury will be thrown out of the blood or out of the central nervous system, depending on what you're eating, and into the bloodstream. And when that mercury is in the blood, it's available to continue doing damage in your body. So that's going to start to lower your iodine levels. It's going to interfere with your mercury, with your magnesium utilization. It's going to interfere with selenium. It's going to block the production of T3 thyroid hormone. It's going to block TSH, which is thyroid signaling hormone. So when it's in your body is almost protecting you by keeping it in its tissue, but when you pull it back out in the blood in a big dose and a big amount after a chelation dose, then people can feel really bad afterwards or even get sick, and in some cases be damaged.
Well, that's interesting because it's interesting that we're even talking about chelation, because Will Spencer, coming up next hour, he's actually going to talk to us about that. So this is great. I can't even believe it, because we'll get to ask him some of these questions, and I'm sure he's going to have some answers. My next question is, though, off of the idea that the blood test for mercury is useless. Would that also mean other metals like barium and aluminum? Are the blood tests also useless for that?
Well, let me be a little more in detail. When you do a blood test and you just look for mercury, your mercury is usually going to show up slow or low.
Okay, we're going to go to a quick break, and I'm sure we all want to hear the rest of that. So we'll be right back with Russ Tanner from Global Skywatch. This is The Truth Denied. Denied here with the lovely Russ Tanner. This is an amazing conversation that we're having. I think that I could just talk to Russ for an entire week and still not get enough information. So, Russ, I really want to thank you again for coming onto the show and plotting, go through this. So, anyway, you were we just covered, mercury, blood test for mercury is useless. And then I just asked the question a little bit ago, if blood tests for mercury are useless, is it also useless for things like barium and aluminum or other toxic metals in the blood? And you were just about to explain that to us.
Right, yeah. Other metals it's not useless for. And even mercury, it can be a little useful for. You can get a couple clues for mercury. If you have a blood test and you see low zinc or you see elevated calcium, those are artifacts that mercury may be present. So there are little hints there, but it's just not conclusive. Elevated calcium is there, for instance, because mercury blocks the utilization of magnesium. And so if you don't have magnesium present, your body can't process calcium, so your calcium just stays free in your blood and you have elevated calcium. Other metals, barium, aluminum, the things that we're interested in today with chemtrails, strontium, yes, you can do blood tests and they typically do show up. And almost every person, with two exceptions in the last several years, who have called me and I've spoken to them, who have had blood tests, have elevated aluminum.
Elevated aluminum, and of course we all know all the different ailments that come along with aluminum. And I do have a question as well with the barium, aluminum, strontium component, which is the whole geoengineering nightmare. Is barium in specific, because you did talk about this on another show about barium and the low potassium testing, finding out with high barium, low potassium, like the barium eats up potassium, apparently, if I said that right. Is barium something fairly new that's showing up in the blood or tested for, or have we been poisoned by barium for many, many moons and we just didn't know it? Do you have any idea?
I think barium exposure is at an all-time high, and I think it's because of chemtrails. A lot of people I've spoken to have high barium levels in their blood, and I think that this is a relatively new phenomenon that's coming from chemtrails. It's a tough one to deal with, too.
And barium, when you had mentioned before how it people that generally have barium toxicity have potassium issues. Is that correct?
That's right. This is where I had March 24th, 2011. I had a heart attack after 2 days of massive, intense spraying, and I wasn't able to wear my wet mask. The only problem they could find in the hospital is my potassium was dangerously low. When your potassium goes low, you can have heart arrhythmia, you can have heart attacks. Look, there are so many people today who are having heart attacks that I personally just can't separate this from chemtrails. Are chemtrails inducing these heart attacks because the barium is depleting the potassium in the body, just like sodium? A lot of people with heart conditions have to stay away from sodium because sodium lowers potassium levels. Well, barium does the same thing. And when your potassium gets too low, you can have a heart attack. Right.
And, I have a neighbor. This is really interesting. And she, about 2.5 months ago, she was having major nausea. She's 68 years old and really healthy, golfer, just out and about all the time, active woman, really neat lady, looks, 15 years younger than she is, one of those types. And all of a sudden she's also really stubborn. And she was getting, I don't want to get too graphic here, but she was having, food wasn't staying in, put it that way. And, a week and a half ago, she ended up in the hospital, and she was in the hospital for a whole week. And one of the things, they tested for everything. They couldn't find anything, but it made me think of this because what they did find is that she had no potassium. And they had her on IVs of potassium, and the potassium still wasn't even registering. They didn't even know how she was still alive. And so, I told her, I said, you might want to check your blood for some toxic metal poisoning, and gave her a clue. But, people, they just think I'm nuts, right? So they don't do the test. But by the way, they sent her home. Just to let you know, they put her on antibiotics. That didn't work. It actually made it worse. They tested her for valley fever, West Nile virus, mono. The top 10. It was none of the above. They can't find anything wrong with her thyroid. They can't find anything. But what they did see was really low potassium. And so what I want to know is, why did they send her home? Because they sent her home and she's just like, she's miserable. She's sleeping around the clock. They sent her home with no clue as to what's happening to her after a week. So, is this happening as well?
Absolutely. I hear from people all the time who are having heart issues. Everybody knows somebody that has heart issues or have had serious heart issues. It's happening all over the place. And in the town I lived in 2005, they started spraying daily, real heavy on a schedule. And between 2005 and 2008, when I forcibly had to move out of that town because I was so sick from the intense spraying, I know more people who died in that 3 years than I know in the rest of my life combined, and doubled. And
what's going to happen to these people, Russ? What's going to happen to them when they send them home and they got low potassium? They had them on an IV of potassium for 8 days, and why are you sending these people home when you haven't even concluded what the hell's happening?
Exactly, and that's what happened to me. All they know is my potassium was low, but all the other tests didn't show any problems. And isn't it interesting that the federal government made over-the-counter potassium limited to 99 milligrams per capsule? And you know what the recommended daily intake for potassium is? 4,700 milligrams. Do you know how many capsules you have to take to even approach that?
Now, I'm not telling the whole bottle.
Right. Don't do that. Nobody should go have huge doses of potassium, because that's not good either. But if you're going to take it, spread it out through the day, and also understand that you're getting some with your food. But the bottom line, it's so interesting that the chemtrail program has also been combined with laws that limit your ability to get potassium in large amounts.
Jeez, that's just crazy to me. That's just absolutely crazy. So now this is what I want to know before before, at the top of the hour, we're going to bring on Will Spencer. But and of course, you're welcome to stay. I hope you stay with us, Russ, because it's going to go right in line with what Will talks about. But just for the record, what do you do? What's your site that you actually help people? People call you. You have herbs. You have just a plethora. Give us that website and contact information so that people can contact you about some of this stuff. And I'm really glad that you're hip as to what's happening right now, and you've always been hip as to the chemtrail factor or component, I should say, and the mercury and all the rest of it, because mainstream doctors aren't. Obviously, my friend was in the hospital for over a week, and they sent her home. And I'm worried about her, so I want to get her some help. So after the show, I'd like to talk to you about that. What can I do to help my friend? But why don't we go ahead and answer those questions, though? Sorry, I just keep rambling.
No problem. Yeah, contact herbs. If you're interested in herbs, we have a website called onlythebestherbs.com, which has a lot of research on it. We base our research in science. It's referenced. If you want to go to our chemtrail website, that's globalskywatch.com. If you want to contact me, you can write me at admin, ADMIN, like administrator, admin at globalskywatch.com. Be happy to talk to you. I do answer all my email and have spoken to many, many people. So feel free to contact me if I can help. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, and then you always, obviously you're seeing a breed of individuals, like some very specific ailments that are going on, and but from what I understand about you, you do deal in, one of your main things is mercury poisoning.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's because it's so prevalent today that every family is struck with it practically. People don't even realize that they have it because mercury causes over 200 very common ailments, from arthritis to heartburn to migraines to vision, nearsightedness and farsightedness, both, depending on how it affects a particular person. It's just across the board. Almost all the major diseases today can be rooted in mercury, among other things.
So, do you have recommendations as well to how somebody would get rid of mercury in their body, and if so, do you address that when people contact you?
Absolutely. In fact, I sometimes feel like I'm a broken record because I go through the spiel over and over again, talking about here are your options of what you can do. But the short of it is, if you want to go the natural route, you can use sulfur. If you want to go the chemical route, you can use things like DMSA and cilantro, things like that.
Russ, stick around with us. We're going to be bringing Will Spencer on. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us this wonderful Friday evening. It's The Truth Tonight. Anyway, we're at the top of the hour, and we still have Russ Tanner. He's going to stick around with us, and I'm really, really grateful for that. We're going to continue the conversation that we're having with Dr. Will Spencer from Body Electric. So welcome to the show, Will.
Hi, good evening. Thanks
for joining us, and thanks for the last minute popping on the show. You work so hard, both of you do, so it's just amazing that you just... It's around the clock. It's a Friday, and everybody's just willing to just continue to get the word out. Well, we were just discussing, the variations of sicknesses associated with mercury being one, and we were also talking about, barium. Russ was talking about, barium's at a new all-time high. It's a newer component in the blood associated with chemtrails and geoengineering, etc. And we were just starting to talk about we touched on chelation therapy. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Chelation, I guess it is. And you're really all about that as well. And when Russ was talking about this, he was saying that, people got ill because of when it loosened up the mercury substance in the body, and the body got kind of overrun by the mercury coming loose, and individuals would get sick. And you were saying, Will, that you have a chelation therapy that people don't get sick. So why don't we just go right into that?
Well, I work to help people so they don't get sick. I mean, you can put things in the body, but when the body gets into a spot, it wants to get rid of the stuff. There's a healing event that takes place, and sometimes the healing event, or also known as Herxheimer reactions, or there's several different things to call it, or that it is referred to. Sometimes the body will be in such a spot that it just wants to dump all the crap, and sometimes it gets hard on the body, and it's uncomfortable. And so what we work is to really keep that down to a bare minimum, so your life isn't too disrupted. We use what's called nature's chelation. We use minerals and microorganisms. That's our main chelating agent. The other one is we use is what we call advanced oxygen therapy, which for most of the world they know it as MMS, or chlorine dioxide. So those are the components that we use.
Okay, and what was that? Advanced
oxygen therapy. You can find it on our website. Oxygen,
yes. And for those who are new to Dr. Will Spencer, his website is www.bodyelectric.com. Is that correct?
Bodyelectrician.com.
Sorry, bodyelectrician. I knew I was missing something. Hey, we just threw this show together. People, give me a little bit of a break. Anyway, now there's a lot of controversy. I want to really go back into this chelation therapy thing because, there's controversy about that, and there's also controversy about the MMS. But since we were already on the subject of chelation therapy, what is it about? Like you said, you work with the person. So what I'm hearing you. Maybe this is what I'm hearing you say. You assist the individual to cleanse whatever the toxicity is, whether it be metals. I imagine it's metals for the most part. Do you do it in a different way, like slower, so it's not so quick, so it doesn't shock the body? Or what's the difference in between the way that you are doing it and what Russ had described earlier in the program?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to hear all of Russ's conversation.
Russ, why don't you just reiterate what you had mentioned with us and how people would get sick with the chelation therapy? Why don't you just kind of go over that again?
Well, yeah, actually, my business partner and I went through that with DMPS by IV. That's pretty harsh on the body, and that was one way a lot of people get sick that I speak with. Or taking a large dose of DMSA. This particularly happens when they're doing a challenge test to pull mercury out of the body through the urine to see if there's mercury in the tissues. So the doctors give them a big dose of these chemicals, and then people can get sick, and some people that I know have been damaged by it.
Okay. So does that make sense to you, Will?
Yeah, I understand how that works. We don't work in that. We come from a different angle. Actually, we're using oral chelation. We don't do any IVs, any of that. So, and why I call it nature's chelation is because in nature, the microorganisms, or another word that is very familiar with most people is the word probiotics, which is the general word for microorganisms. Their job in nature is to eat or convert new elements to make them available to the plant or to the human in matter. Another term that most people have heard is bioremediation, which is basically what we've done is taken the bioremediation practice using microorganisms and minerals and using them internally. And it just so happens that those microorganisms and minerals, they're not in the food chain anymore, and they're not in the environment anymore. And when you put them back, the heavy metals just go out of the body because not only do the minerals attract them electrically or magnetically, but the microorganisms digest them, as well as petrochemicals, all known radioactive isotopes today, and a lot of these hazardous industrial waste elements that are not in the food chain and in the deodorants and in the cleaning solvents and so forth. These microorganisms that we use digest all of that, render them harmless, and then they can be flushed right out of the body without too much problems usually.
Okay, and then would one have to stay on these probiotics and prebiotics and enzymes, etc., for any length of time, or are you just doing this to actually cleanse the body, or are you cleansing as you go, and then this becomes a new way of life for the client?
Well, it's surprisingly to when you understand these microorganisms and minerals used to be in the environment in the food chain, and they're like 80% of our immunity. As all the new science is saying, we have 80% of our immunity resides in our stomach or in our intestinal tract, and that is with the broad spectrum of microorganisms. So I encourage everyone to keep on them because they're part of our immunity. They help with digestion. They help keep you clean. And because we're being constantly bombarded with the heavy metals and other chemicals being dumped on us, not only from the chemtrails, but now they're in the food chain, and now they're in they're all in the cleaning product. They're everywhere. So if you stop taking them, where are you going to get them from? Because we're needed. These microorganisms that I use, most of them are non-colonizing, meaning they don't live naturally and reproduce inside of you. They're transient, meaning they come, they do their job, and they go. And they're designed by nature to be a constant exposure, but nobody lives in nature anymore. And on top of that, nature is not really nature anymore. It's diminished. So you have to really, when you grasp that, then it's only for me and from my way of thinking, it's only going to make sense to continue to stay on them. I do. I practice what I preach, and I've been doing it for years.
Right, and so basically it's surviving in an artificially toxic world.
Amen.
Okay, got it. And just to let the audience know, I know we have a lot of new listeners. My kitty Harley is on the microorganisms, the probiotics, prebiotics, and enzymes that Dr. Will Spencer designed for Harley, and he does for his patients as well. And I must say, my kitty was diagnosed with IBD, and for those of you out there who are pet rescuers, and your pets are really not pets, you don't call yourself an owner, you call yourself mom and dad, like I do. My pet is my kid. This was very, very harsh to watch back in November when Harley suddenly had an attack out of nowhere and couldn't hold food in. He ended up in emergency, and many, many tests later, blood tests, urine tests, fecal sample matter tests, x-rays, you name it. And after all of that, we were in the lap of a specialist, and thank God, because she did finally diagnose him with irritable bowel disorder. Now, and it looked like it came out of nowhere. So this is what I want to let you people know. This specialist, who I do love, and of course Dr. Will Spencer, because he's working with me with Harley, and we are having a lot of success, which is amazing. IBD is death to an animal. Most people that get diagnosed with IBD for a pet will put their pet to sleep, because the way the system operates, you will now be in line for many other diseases that come with it, because what happens with IBD is it's the immune system breaks down, obviously, the digestive, as Dr. Will Spencer just pointed out, immune system, digestion, all of it breaks down, and basically the animal will get cancer, intestinal cancer. That's probably the first thing that's going to show up if diabetes doesn't kill them first. So let me tell you this, that the specialist 2 years ago had under 5% of her practice was IBD for dogs and cats. Today it is 60%. So if this is happening with our animals, in pet food, in dog food and cat food, go to my articles on the Truth Denied website. You will see what we have done successfully with Harley. So I just wanted to interject that, because both Russ Tanner and Will Spencer, you agree, Will, that IBD, irritable bowel disorder, and irritable bowel syndrome is an epidemic in this country, is it not?
I agree with that statement, absolutely.
Okay. And do you think that Russ agreed? But do you agree that another component to this, besides the chemtrails and toxicities in our water, the bombardment that we're getting in our food and our rainwater and our drinking water and all the rest of it, is another component is the genetically modified food component?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. So in light of that, for the listening audience, because I will say Dr. Will Spencer has given me a real education on this. I have had to educate myself because of my little son, Kitty Harley. So, and it's really been amazing because Harley's doing really well, by the way. Thank you so much. But he's doing really well. He's gained his weight back. By the way, weight loss is one of the attributes to IBD. And if you have a child and your child's dumping weight and they have not been able to diagnose your child, I am telling you, please have them test for IBD. ABC, CBS, and NBC have been doing, as of late, calling it the attack on children, food allergy syndrome. So they finally came out in mainstream media. Children are getting sick across the board, and they're calling it a food allergy. So this microorganisms and minerals, or probiotics and prebiotics, whatever we want to term them, is this something that you're working with farm animals as well?
Yes.
And you're having great success, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely, because for the most part, what we're being told to feed ourselves, our animals, is incorrect biologically. And the gut that's where the digestion takes place, and we're eating things that aren't biologically correct. What's going to happen?
Didn't they learn their lesson when there was mad cow?
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh.
I mean, especially cats and dogs. You look on the bag of your food, and what's the first few ingredients? It's usually things like corn, potatoes, rice, and grain. Okay, these are all seeds, which dogs and cats are carnivores. They don't even eat those things, and they disguise them with flavor enhancers, and I know this firsthand because I used to have trucks, and my family did, and we'd haul. I used to haul chicken parts to the Alpo dog factory, as well as there's another large dog factory down in Crete, Nebraska, and I would unload my chicken guts, if you will, ground up, and there'd be semi-loads of blood and coming from other factories and other components coming in there, as well as we used to haul big semi-loads of corn. I've hauled potatoes into the dog food factory, and you wouldn't even believe what the potatoes look like. They don't accept them for human consumption because they are so rotten. They get hauled to the dog food or the cat food factory. They get washed with all these chemicals to kill whatever's on them, and then they get dehydrated, and then they get put into the dog and cat food, and that's your potato starch. I mean, I could talk all day just on the components and the disgusting things they put in animal food is horrible.
Oh, my goodness. So why do you think it took so long for animals to start reacting so violently to the toxins in the food? And people, I guess I should say. Is it because they've been adding more and more and more over time? Is that probably what's going on?
I think that's part of it. And a couple of things is the GMOs are in about over 70% of the food chain right now. It never used to be like that. That's only been in the last few years. And the other thing that's increased is generationally, we've been degrading at least for 100 years. Because they've known, they meaning the medical community, the government, the agricultural community has known since at least the 20s that the food is mineral deficient because the soil is mineral deficient. And now we're having generational things occur. You cannot make a healthy baby if you're not healthy yourself. So, and that goes for dogs, cat, all mammals, anything. You cannot reproduce something better than yourself. Doesn't work. And we are in this slow decline, and over the last 30 years, or 40 years especially, here now, we are going downhill at a rate that's, it's not just a little snowball anymore. We're talking avalanche.
So we really hit that. We really hit that wall, didn't we?
Oh,
My
yes,
goodness.
absolutely.
Let's come back from the break and talk more about this. We're with Dr. Will Spencer and Russ Tanner. This is The Truth Tonight. I'm your host, Roxy Lopez. We'll be back after this short break. We're on with Russ Tanner from Global Skywatch and, of course, Dr. Will Spencer from BodyElectrician.com. Both amazing people in my life, and I'm glad to be able to share them with all of you. We were just, going down the road talking about this, the whole bioremediation or microorganisms and minerals to help the immunity and the digestion and everything. And when we were on the break, I was sharing with Will Spencer what I shared with all of you earlier in the show about, my neighbor, my friend who ended up in the hospital for 8 days, and the only thing that they could really come proof positive was that she had low potassium. And so I was sharing this with Dr. Will Spencer that thousands of dollars a test, 8 days in the hospital, and still didn't find out what she had. And then Dr. Will Spencer, you said,
well, I just had a client last week. Well, actually, it was week before, but come to us after, again, $7,000 or more worth of tests at the clinic and the hospital. And he all of a sudden his back started having problems in his legs. In January, now he's using a cane, and the doctors can't seem to figure out anything. So he comes to us, and on the first visit, with the tests we have, discovered he has 9 infectious diseases. One of them being polio virus, and another one being encephalitis, and some other rare ones, but. We got that right in the first 25 minutes of him coming to the office. Why couldn't they figure that out?
Right. And did you have to test specifically for the encephalitis or the polio?
No, because we use electronic frequencies. So I have a machine that you put your hand on the scanner and you sit there while it runs about 30,000 different frequencies in through the machine. And it's scanning for these frequencies, and it picks them up if they're out of range, what the machine would consider normal for you. It picks things up, and I run all the microorganisms that are remotely possible. I run all the heavy metals. I run all radioactive isotopes. I run all known cancer frequencies. I'm looking for crazy stuff, and this guy had 9 of them, and the numbers were extremely high. I mean, there was no goofing around here. This guy is, and the doctors couldn't figure this out. I mean, it's just, I get hot when stuff like that happens.
Hey, you know what? Earlier in the show, we were fired up too, man. I was fired up when I got on the show tonight, so I know exactly what you mean. And then we heard like a really cool song by Zeppelin, thanks to my engineers and producers, and they just threw us a like really cool mellow song. It kind of mellowed us back out again. It was very cool. But I got to say, I have to ask this question: how the hell, excuse my French, did he get 9 infectious diseases such as encephalitis and polio?
He's working and actually living in a motel.
Oh. So is this out of the ordinary or not?
Well, for his particular circumstance, I would say not. I mean, you have to understand, people, the interior environment in a motel.
Well, let's say somebody, let's go there. Somebody that lives in a home that, let's say, has black mold. Are you going to be able to scan them and pick up any sort of infectious something or others?
Well, black mold is making its home in people too. So, yes. I mean, if the frequencies are there and they're known and the machine has it in this database, this is what we run against it. And
what's the factor for the upper respiratory that's just rampant right now? What's going on with that? Are you testing people that have upper respiratory issues that they can't get rid of?
Not everybody chooses to do the test.
Oh.
But I encourage that if they want to know. Otherwise, I look at their symptoms. You come to me and you want me to help you individually, directly. I've got 9 pages to fill out. before we even have a conversation, because I want to know what's going on. And those symptoms, what's happening, how things are expressing themselves, is really tells a huge story for me. And especially with upper respiratory, I mean, upper respiratory is rampant right now with people having upper respiratory problems.
Okay, and I guess what I would want to know is there a myriad of causes for upper respiratory, or are we sort of honing it into a few facets, for instance, geoengineering being one of them? And if so, what for most upper respiratory issues would be a good place to start with aiding an individual?
Depends if you want to just get rid of, if you're looking at symptom relief, or if you want the whole organism to heal, because the breakdown of the lungs is where we get our air. I mean, it's a constant use. You are basically being exposed to everything in the environment, and we have an environment that is extremely toxic right now. So it just depends on you as the client, what direction you want to go with me. You want to just take care of symptoms, if that's all your belief allows, or if you want to look at a lot bigger picture.
Right, and I think that in my, hearing stories and getting a lot of emails as well from doing shows with people like you and Russ, we get a lot of questions, and there are those who are of the mask the symptoms sort of mentality, and then there are those who want to go a little bit deeper and actually, rather than mask symptoms, let's go in and work with our bodies to heal our bodies, or get optimum health, if you will, out of our bodies. And do you see that as well? I bet you both see that in your clientele.
Yeah, I do. I try to encourage people to go look at the big picture, but not everybody wants to. So, that's fine too. I'll help you the best I can,
That's great. And did you see the CDC's report on asthma this week?
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, asthma is turning into an epidemic as well.
Yeah, go figure.
I know. Sad. It's really sad. Asthma, my sister has asthma, and I grew up chronic asthma.
I did too.
Did you? And now,
Yep.
do you still have asthma?
No, I don't have anything. I was on.
What did you do for that? I want to know.
I practice what I preach.
Right. See, there we go. That's real simple. Russ, do you get people with asthma?
Absolutely. Okay. All the time.
Are you aware of the CDC's release earlier this week on asthma?
I didn't. I wasn't aware of it until we talked about it earlier.
Okay. It's gone up from something like 2 million to 17 million.
Yeah. No surprise.
In the United States in 2 years. In 2 years. So this is kind of cool. Yeah, that works. So with and I do know from growing up with a chronic asthmatic, she has a doctor, and she's on the older she got, more and layers of medicines are added on. So she's just a pharmaceutical thing. And what I feel so bad is my sister has a farm. She eats organics. She grows her own food. Everything else that she does in her life. She doesn't drink. She doesn't smoke. She does everything organically. Yet that component always concerns me, that she's on 6 or 7 medications for asthma. I think it's affecting her liver right now. But anyway, I'm going to leave that alone, because maybe I can hook you guys up with my sister, and maybe we can do something about it. She lives on the big island of Hawaii, and she's a beautiful person. So anyway, back to this. So you practice what you preach. Would you say that for the most part, I don't want to use the word cure, because I know you don't like that word, Will, and I don't want to use the word cure all, because there's no such thing. So, but I think you'll know what I mean, because I don't know if I can articulate it any other way. But would you say that a lot of the solving of issues that people are having is boiling down to taking extra these microorganisms, these pro and prebiotics, enzymes, so forth and so forth? Would you say that it all goes back to beginning there to assist the immune system and the digestion?
Absolutely, because at the same time, it will get the toxins out. It's the same component that does the chelating, that does the increases your immunity. It all works together.
Okay, and so and hence what you're saying is because this is not available to us in the in the world anymore, in nature. How are you making these products if they're not available in nature?
Well, I've taken the time to hunt them down and figure out, locate the people that do make them or knew how to, and they reproduce these. They farm them for me, if you will. They manufacture them.
Okay.
Manufacturing isn't a good word because they're live organisms. It's like having a farm because they're living organisms. It's not like making a car, manufacturing. It's do you understand? I mean,
I do.
Okay.
I really do. There were a lot of people, like in the last 5 years in LA, 5 or 6 years, the big thing is raw food. Everybody's saying, we need to be eating live raw food as opposed to cooked or microwaved or this or that, blah, 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 blah. What do you think, what do you have to say about raw food diets?
If you can digest it, most people, their digestive tract is so out of whack they can't even handle raw. It has to be cooked, and I know a lot of people that can't eat raw.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the people that we get to see, a lot of them are eating 5 or 6 components. That's it. That's it. That's all they can handle because either for allergies or their stomach doesn't work or their intestinal tract doesn't work or there's something. They've only eating 5 different items.
Oh, my goodness. Hence this big thing that came on CBS, ABC, and NBC regarding food allergies. And they were saying the same thing, that children, they were like taking all kinds of food out of their diet, and they could only eat 1 or 2 or 3 items, which is really scary to me. That's a really limited diet and a limited nutritional diet at that. So how long does it take you, Dr. Spencer, to get somebody's immune system back up and going and their digestive tract working again through the the microorganism and mineral supplement, whatever you want to call it? How long does it take to get somebody feeling better and gaining, having good weight again on them and all the rest of it?
That's one of those questions that I really hate, and I hate it because there's so many variables and people are at so many different stages of ill health that what for one person might feel a difference in less than a week, somebody else might not feel a difference for 85 days. And I've had that happen.
Does everyone eventually feel a difference?
Everybody that works with us and follows through gets a benefit.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I know exactly what you mean, just because of Harley's diagnosed back in December, and we're still working with Harley. We're still, my kitty. We're still having to work with certain things in the diet to get things functioning, as best we can, optimal health as best we can. And it does fluctuate; it goes up and down. So there's nothing that's for sure. So I completely understand that. I completely get that. Would you say that people who are healthy, people who feel healthy, people who feel vibrant, should get on these nutritional elements that you are referring to? Would you say that everyone should be on them, even if they feel healthy?
I believe so, because they're not in the food anymore, and our food used to be our medicine. Now our foods are toxin because they're extremely mineral deficient. And we don't have the microorganism base that we used to. So I would say, yeah, I agree, yes.
Wow. Because eventually we're going to get, I guess what it's saying is that even if you feel healthy and you eat a fair amount of good food and you've got a fairly good digestive tract and so forth, eventually this is going to creep in our own life, and eventually we're going to get the symptoms are going to begin of one of the other diseases because it's not available to us really in nature. So this would be a preventative additional measure, to not get ill down the road, and then to preserve at least the health that we have currently.
Right. Yes,
I
because
think that makes sense.
for instance, mercury and lead and arsenic and barium and cadmium and these elements don't come out of the body because we don't have, first of all, the minerals in our diet that are chelators, and we don't have the microorganisms that we used to that chelate. So just by adding them in, we have an extreme what's the word? The heavy metals get pulled right out as soon as you start putting these products in, and I monitor that because I'm measuring it with the frequencies of it. They're there when you start, before you start there, and you follow along on the program, and after 90 days you have another test, and they're not there anymore.
That's amazing.
So the proof's in the readings.
That is amazing. We have one last break coming up here, and I want you to share a little bit of information about the magnificent work you're doing with the bees. This is the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. We'll be right back after this short break. We're back at the last 15 minutes of the show, and believe me, that song sounds so beautiful. I absolutely adore Sir Elton John. I worked with him for quite a few years, and he's a good guy. Real good guy. We're back, Truth Tonight Talk Radio. I'm Roxy Lopez, and we are wrapping it up with Will Spencer and Russ Tanner. Will, I had to ask you that question, about the bees, because you explained some of the stuff that you're doing, and I want this audience to hear about it because it is phenomenal with the bees. So, saving bees, why it's so important, how you're doing it, and your success with it.
Saving the bees. Right now in this country, anyhow, bees are used to pollinate a huge portion of our food chain. And it's used in conventional agriculture, which is considered one of the more toxic environments to work in. And bees are working. And I used to have my own bees on my farm, and they began to die, and this is what led me on this little trek of mine with bees. Basically, I'm doing the same thing with the bees as I'm helping people do, and cleaning their environment and boosting their immunity and their internal environment as well as their external. And we are getting some amazing results with the beekeepers that I'm working with. And I'm actually editing some videos and building a website right now so I can start sharing what we're doing, because we have products developed just for the bees. That I have a beekeeper in northwestern Pennsylvania that is a commercial beekeeper, and this is his second year, last year and now this year, using our products, and he keeps calling me with these statements. Like the other day, he called me and he said, normally he would, when he breaks the hive apart to make more hive, and I'm not a professional beekeeper. I'm just I had my own for for a while, and when I had my farm for my own honey use, and I don't know all the terminologies. I'll give you that disclaimer right off the top. I'm not a professional beekeeper, but he said that when he duplicates his hives or splits his hives, he would normally be able to split a hive once or two, one hive down into 2 or 3 hives. Well, for the one hive, for sure that he's been doing the working with us on our products for this study, he split one hive into 9. That's how healthy that hive was this year. He's never seen that ever in his life. And
so the bees are just healthy, optimal health, I guess you would say, and they're thriving.
Optimal is not the word. These are extremely well in extremely good health.
Wow.
He called me 2 months ago. It was 2 months ago, or maybe it was only 6 weeks ago. But anyhow, he called me coming out of winter to tell me one day that he's like second-generation beekeeper, and he's never had any. He's always had some kind of die-off. This year was the first time that he's never experienced any winter die-off at all. So a week later, I took my camera and went to his place, drove 6 hours to his apiary, and we videotaped for the better part of a day, we tore down several different hives to prove the health of these hives coming out of winter. Not one of them smelled bad. They were all bringing in pollen, and they were all lively. I mean, he said normally the guard bees would come to the entrance board to see what's going on when somebody come into the bee yard. Well, when someone got within 10 feet of the hive, the guard bees were coming out at you to see who you were. Not attacking you, but just coming out to see who's this threat. He's never seen that kind of vibrancy before with his bees, ever. And this guy's handled thousands and thousands of hives of bees as a commercial beekeeper.
This is just, and when you've been telling me some of the stories, when we do have the opportunity to talk in between our busy life schedules, it just makes me smile. It really does. It makes me so happy that, the difference. And, even, can you explain to the audience, like, the difference between, like, why were the hives before, why did they have an odor? And why do they just smell so sweet with honey now? What's the difference? Like, what was that odor before?
Well, there's several things that you get a bacterial growth or a fungal growth, or there's a disease called foul brood, and it smells like something died. And that's what happened to my bees. Is I got foul brood one year, and they all died through the winter. They didn't run out of food. They just got basically an infection, a systemic infection, and it killed everybody. And when I opened the hives up in the spring, it smelled like something died. It was horrible. And then not only do we have foul brood, there's different kinds of bacterial and fungal infections that are going on with bees that have odors. We have mites, different kinds of mites. There's viral mites and tracheal mites. There's all these pathogens. So all we're doing basically is building the immunity. We're using bioremediation techniques inside the hive to microorganisms decontaminate the hive, as well as boost the immunity of the bee. We're feeding the bee actual food. We've come up with a pollen patty now, just 2 weeks ago, that because beekeepers need to supplement when they're using their bees commercially, because they're not allowed, or they don't have the time or whatever, to have their own food source in their hive because of the stress of moving them and pollinating and so forth. We just created a pollen patty that is totally non-GMO, totally non-toxic. These bees attacked his hand, he told me, because after this pollen patty, and he didn't even get the hive open. They just came swarming out of the hive. And before he got the hive open to put the pollen patty in, and they were all on his hands eating through the wax paper to get at this pollen patty, which that's amazing in itself.
I bet, absolutely. And so the bees are behaving the way they should be behaving, and even better than this beekeeper has ever even seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is amazing. And I bet you this is the reason you live, right?
This is the reason. Yeah, that's right.
I know what you mean. I really do.
You haven't lived until you stood in the middle of a bee yard and you got 5 million bees bumping into you, all doing their job.
I just love it.
You haven't lived, because I've lived in my bee yard, and I stood in the middle of 12 beehives, and they all died. And to feel that, and then to feel the vibrancy of these bees now, after they're in the same environment that the guy down the road just lost 60% of his hives.
Well, it sounds like you have some work to do in that area.
It's happening. I'm excited. I'm looking forward. If you want to know more, you have to send me an email, because I don't have the website up. So you can go to my website, Body Electrician, and send me a message through the contact form. I'll send you the PDF of what we're doing.
Okay. And is there any other way that people can communicate with you or write you emails? Because I'm going to make a video of this whole show, and I can put information. Is it the general information that you've given me before?
Yeah, otherwise you can send me an email to will@bodyelectrician.com.
Okay, and so that's for the general public, and then of course, we're going to wrap it up, and I'm still new at American Freedom Radio, so I never get the end of the show right, so I'm going to start right now with trying to wrap up the show because I never get it right, and let's all just pray I get it right today because it'll be amazing, and for those of you who are listening, you want to stick around for my buddy, my good friend, 25 years. I've known Sean David Morton, and he comes up next, and he's just a riot. He's just amazing encyclopedia of knowledge. And then, of course, if you want to get a hold of Will Spencer, just go to WIL at bodyelectric.com. And then,
Body Electrician.
Body Electrician. I don't know what's wrong with me. Slap me. Slap me. And then Russ, like that'll work. I'll just slap you back. And Russ, you want to have any last parting words? I know that people can reach you at onlythebestherbs.com, Global Skywatch, or admin, if they want to write to an email, admin at globalskywatch.com. And is there any last parting words that you'd like to let the audience know?
Well, sure. I would love to support what Will was talking about with minerals. Study University South Florida 20 years ago, comparing organically grown versus pesticide-grown foods. Over 20 vegetables tested. Every organically grown vegetable had 10 to 100 times the mineral content of pesticide-grown foods. So the foods today are mineral deficient, just like Will was saying earlier. Knowledge is power. People need to understand and know this. So I want people to know that and get healthy.
Oh, right on, Russ. Right on. This has been the Truth Tonight Talk Radio.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
The American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here every Friday from 7 to 9 Central for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. If you would like to speak to the host, the call-in number is 218-339-8525. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Absolutely. Good evening to everybody. It's Friday, May 4th. I'm so happy to be here. It's the Truth Tonight Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Roxy Lopez. And before I go any further, I must let you know, and I really need your help. One of our guests today, Miriam Delicato, who is, her message is aimed at all humanity, and Miriam has established a really special bond with the traditional Hopi. And, of course, you know that this show is broadcasted to you live from Phoenix, Arizona. Miriam has been working with the Hopi here, and I had an unfortunate phone call a couple of hours ago. Miriam will not be able to make the show, and neither will Bernard Alvarez. And we have been asked to pray for them, pray for love in the world, pray from our heart chakras. This is heavy stuff, people. It's been a heavy week. I can't even tell you. Of information, and a lot of groups and different organizations. We are really starting to bond and collectively work together on this planet. It is amazing. It can be stressful at times, but it's absolutely amazing. But Miriam has asked for the prayers. She is in need of prayer. They have a lot of opposition, and I think that anyone who's listening to this show right now knows what opposition is like. It's not a good feeling, especially when the opposers are liars and thieves. Very difficult to sit and listen. So we will reschedule Miriam and Bernard for another time when the climate is not so heavy as it is today. We're going to have, that Friday, the 18th, we're going to have Al DeChico and Robert Forget. They're coming on because we have a lawsuit that I'm a part of. They started it, and it's about geoengineering and the illness that goes with it. And people are turning in their blood tests. We did a call to action. We all are working together on this, and that call to action went through the roof in the last 3 weeks. People are sending in their hair samples, results in their test samples. So we really do need that. And so if you could go to Chemtrails Kill or Al DeChico's page, Geoengineering Lawsuit, and sign up and get those results. There's an attorney in place going pro bono after the federal government. Things are starting to take shape as long as we, the people, show up to the party. It's amazing. I can go on and on about the guests that are coming up. Just amazing stuff. And I'm really happy to have them all and the information and the work that they're all doing. But let's come back in a little bit. We have a wonderful guest who helped me out tonight. Our first guest tonight is Russ Tanner from the Global Skywatch. And we are going to get into it. We're going to really get into it. In the second hour, we're going to bring onto the show Dr. Will Spencer. He's going to talk about some stuff that he's been doing regarding the bees and curing. He doesn't like to use the word cure. Healing colony collapse disorders around the country. This is amazing. Healing cows, healing people. My pet, Harley, is now a member of the Dr. Will Spencer team. He's now under Dr. Spencer's care, and we have amazing results. But without any further ado, I don't want to waste any more time, and I must thank my dear friend Russ Tanner and Will Spencer for saying an hour before the show, "You got it, babe. We're there." Welcome, Russ Tanner. Thank you.
Hello, Roxy.
So, sorry I took up so much of the time in the front of the show, but we'll have a lot. Well, you have the rest of the hour, and of course you can stick around for the second hour too. So, Russ, what do you think about everything I was just talking about? Are you heads up on any of these subjects?
Yeah, some of it. I did talk to the attorney in California the week before last. I had a little email with him today, and I'm just trying to keep up with what's going on, with a lawsuit. He's working on getting things together, and we're looking to get people to send in their blood tests and water tests. So yeah, I've been keeping up with it and keeping track of what's going on as much as I can.
Well, yeah, and I've been a part of this, not this particular lawsuit. There's another lawsuit that he also has on the county level. And I think what Al DeChico and Robert are doing is fantastic. I mean, they're going into, Al's going into, the city council meetings, town hall meetings, wherever they'll listen, presenting these facts, because Al's, got a lot of talks of low pressure. And I will fight this. I will fight this, and I will continue to fight this. But let's go back to what Governor Brewer did. Cut off the water to California as you're going to do this to us? We're going to do this to you. You're going to boycott us? We're going to boycott you. It's not what it looks like. Water is the new blue gold, people. It's the next frontier. And what the federal government is working on doing with each of the states is what the states are doing is hoarding water now. We're going to talk about that in another show. And believe me, I have the facts. And America, you need to stand up. We have so much being taken away from us, it's not even funny. I also want to thank American Freedom Radio for a couple of things. Since I have joined the American Freedom Network family, our shows have been really amazing. And the producers are absolutely on it. And the owner, Danny Romero, is absolutely on top of this network. And I want to thank American Freedom Radio for offering me yet another show, because I have so many guests now that I'm booked for the rest of the year if I continue with once a week. So I want to thank them for finding a spot for me in the same time slot, which is 7 to 9 Central. I will now be having shows on Mondays and Fridays. So American Freedom Radio, you rock. No rules, no taboo topics, and a really tight, lean machine. So I have to thank you for that. And it's because of this show that now I'm getting contacted by so many people. You have no idea. This show is going to start to get really, really big. Our YouTube channel is just blowing up week after week. Our website, The Truth Denied, is blowing up. It means that people are waking up. That's all that's telling me. And the more we have opposition, it means the more worthy these types of shows are. It means people are listening and doing and taking action. So we do have Deborah Tavares from the Coalition in California coming on next Friday. She's going to talk about how to opt out of a smart meter. I did it. I can tell you how to do it too. It can be done. We're also going to have Howard Stein next week, and he's going to update us on everything following through to the end of this year. By the way, Howard Stein has been the most amazing man with the most amazing facts and the number one show on my network, on my radio show. The 14th, we start our Monday shows, 7 to 9 Central, and to start that off, to kick that off, is Rosalind Peterson, and she's got some really important news, some more updates on what's going on in our oceans of all things, as well as geoengineering, and some calls to action that we really need to get behind. The following week, this week has been a very volatile week in Arizona, and it's getting worse. I have to say, I myself have been working in a coalition for nearly 5 years on some water rights issues here in Casa Grande, Arizona. And I got some bad news this week. They've lowered the water pressure legal limit. And of course, during the 5 years of our letter writing and town hall meetings, etc., they really wasted our time knowing that they were going to be changing the laws in this state. And now the legal limit is 20 PSI. But I'm going to tell you something right now, and I do have some guests that are coming on the show. So we have guests for you, and we're going to get down and dirty today. Because what's happening here is, if you all remember the big stink in Arizona in April 2010 with SB 1070, the Immigration Act law, tyrannical law, whatever you want to call it. At the same time that law went through, that Governor Brewer passed it, the federal government started a lawsuit against the state of Arizona. The following months were pretty heavy in Arizona because California, being one of the biggest states, began to boycott us. And the industry, the hotel industry, football, baseball, all of it started going real south real fast because teams were boycotting Arizona in the NFL. And the hotels were usually packed with seminars, generally coming out of California. We're getting cancellations up the wazoo. And a few months of this, Arizona was getting hammered because of the SB 1070. Then Governor Brewer made an announcement that she was going to cut water supply to California. And for those of you who do not know, Arizona supposedly supplies 25% of the water to California. So she cut the water off to California. And as you all know, this was a big dog and pony show, but it was like, okay, what is this all about? Meanwhile, in my local city, I was fighting with water pressure issues that seem to be going down every year, the water pressure itself. Let me tell you what happens in Arizona when the water pressure goes down really low. The water becomes so shallow in the mains, the pipes, that the water starts to get hot. So imagine this in 115-degree weather 4 months of the year, when you go to turn your water on to take a shower, that water is hot water on top of things in his blood, and he's really suffering. And by the way, I don't know if you're noticing, Russ, but I'm just getting deluged with emails of ill people. And I don't know if you're up on this, but CBS, ABC, and NBC, our lovely mainstream media, has actually started reporting some truth. I can't even believe it. I almost fell off my chair. But this entire week, the number one topic for these channels is children and an epidemic of food allergies. Mm-hmm. They're finally coming out with it. Of course, those like yourself and Will Spencer have done this for quite some time. Those of us who have researched it know it's been going on for quite some time, but it's an epidemic now. And I don't know if you want to address that or not, Russ, but I personally don't think it's a food allergy. I think it's a genetically modified food allergy, but that's just my opinion. What do you think about this?
Well, I think you're 100% right. I also would add that it's no coincidence that children who get autism or get ADD and ADHD invariably have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. They have food allergies because the mercury causes mutations to the intestinal flora, which are the friendly bacteria in the intestinal tract. And those mutated bacteria then start eating holes in the lining, which then lets undigested proteins through into your bloodstream, and you start having these strange allergic reactions to foods you never had problems with before. So this, in my mind, is a 100% artificially created epidemic, and I'm sure the mainstream media is going to put some kind of twist on it and blame someone, but I think that our inundation with chemtrails and the medical profession's fascination with mercury is catching up to us, has for quite a while, and that's why we're seeing this, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I agree with that. And Russ, do you deal at all with people that have food allergies at all?
I talk to a lot of people that have all kinds of problems, including food allergies. And I just let everybody know I'm not a doctor, and I don't prescribe or diagnose. I don't do any of the things doctors do. I just express my personal opinion based on my research and experience. But I've spoken with a lot of people who have food allergies or have children with food allergies.
Right, and then you deal. I know your name of the game because of your own experience, Russ, and with the mercury poisoning. I know that you do deal with heavy metals in the blood. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's an epidemic.